How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can be like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the place where you can come and ask all of your questions about politics. I'm not here to fight with people, I'm not here to debate with people. I don't care if you have different politics than me. I don't care if you're further to the left or further to the right. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you didn't vote at all. I'm just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. Sometimes I get a little spicy if people get a little spicy with me in the comments, but most of the time I try to just answer as nicely as I possibly can. So maybe you're somebody on the right and you've always wanted to ask somebody on the left a question. This is the place where you can do it. Or maybe you are somebody who believes that both parties are the same and you want to talk to somebody who is a proud Democrat, then this is the place where you can ask that question. I'm a progressive, and so maybe you want to know what that means. So this is the place where you can ask those questions, and you don't have to worry about getting judged for your question. You don't have to worry about if I ask this, people are going to think I'm some sort of MAGA person, or if I ask this, they're going to think I'm some sort of libtard cuck. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. It is just good faith questions to all good faith answers. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language because there's all these different phrases and three-letter agencies that just get bandied about, and we just refer to people by their last name. And if you don't know what these words mean, if you don't know who these people are, if you don't know what these abbreviations stand for, it can be really difficult to figure out what's going on with your government. And there's also a lot of misinformation out there as well. So what is accurate? What is really happening? What voices can we trust? This is a place where you can ask all those questions, and I'll do my best to give you as impartial and an objective an answer as I can possibly muster. So you don't got to worry about judgments or ridicule or debate. I'm not here to roast anybody. I'm not here to get into fights with people. This is not one of those shows where I call people up and I yell at them for having different political beliefs than me, or I tell them they're an idiot or that they're wrong, and then I get to clip it and put it on my channel. This is not that show. I'm not here to fight. I don't do debates. Debates are kind of stupid, I think. They're not really productive. I'm trying to be productive. I'm trying to be productive and engage with people about politics and get people activated and informed. And so let me be part of that journey for you. If you've always wanted to know, like, how do I get started? I've always wanted to know this about politics, and I have no idea. But you worked. Like maybe you live in a blue state, but you have like some thoughts that are more conservative, and you don't have anybody to ask about it. Like, am I crazy to think this sort of thing? Or maybe you live in a red state and you want to ask a question, but you're worried that people would think that you were a Democrat and then they would ostracize you. Doesn't matter here. You can ask any questions that you like. There will only be good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So if you got any questions, just put them in the chat, and I will happily give you an answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language because there's all these different three-letter agencies and abbreviations and words that are bandied about that we don't just bother to define, like reconciliation or the filibuster or continuing resolution and stuff like that. And we just refer to people by their last names sometimes. And if you don't know who these people are, who Hegseth or Bondi or Noam or Patel are or Bongino, then how do you know what's going on? And there's also lots of misinformation propaganda out there. So how do you know what's going on there as well? Dandy Dan 2025 says, which side are they lying about? They have lists or they don't. Are you talking about the Epstein thing? I have no idea. I think that there's a lot of circumstantial evidence to suggest that Donald Trump was very closely associated with Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't think that it is, I think it's pretty clear why they might not want that information to get out there. Trump's lawyers were Epstein's lawyers, and the guy who negotiated Epstein's sweetheart deal in Florida was like Trump's first commerce secretary or something like that. Zach Willis says, thoughts on Ozzy's last performance? I didn't watch it. I'm not really following Ozzy Osbourne. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett. I'm just here to answer your questions about politics, regardless of if they are simple or complicated. I don't care who you voted for. This is not the show where I fight with people. I'm not here to debate. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions. So maybe you're somebody in the right. You've always wanted to ask someone in the left a question. Maybe you're somebody in a red state, but you've always wanted to ask a question about that makes it seem like you're a Democrat. You don't know where to ask that question. All right, I got a fan. That's sweet. AMF1234 says, "You're a comedian, aren't you?" I am. I am a stand-up comedian. Let's see here. Alexandria MCC says, "What do you think American politics will look like in a year?" Terrifying, I guess. The budget bill that Republicans just passed increased ICE's budget by 360%. So they more than tripled their budget. And they are a lawless rogue organization that has been arresting anybody that they feel like, regardless of if they are citizens or have done no crimes or are here legally or whatever. So, now they're going to be able to hire more people to do more of that shit. We're going to have concentration camps here in America for anybody that ICE or Trump does not like. Alrighty, let's see here. Galargra says Trump is disrespecting the soldiers that gave their life for the Constitution. I completely agree with that. He just promoted 4 tech CEOs to be like lieutenant colonels or some shit like that. So he just skipped over a bunch of career military personnel so that he could install his tech billionaire buddies into extremely powerful positions in the military. That's a slap in the face to people that are actually in the military. That's a really terrifying as far as like consolidation of military power is concerned. All right. Pump Fetty too says, "Do I think Epstein was murdered?" I don't really know, and also don't really care. Joe TO2 says, "Why do Democrats call every Republican racist?" So Joe T, the reason why somebody who is not a Republican might call a Republican a racist is because the policies that the Republican Party champions are racist policies. Like we have policies that try to create more equity and equality within all the different races and religions and sexual orientations. And the Republican Party has been doing everything they can to strike that down, past the point of reason, where you're not allowed to teach a book that has a gay character in it in high school. We're not talking about like sexually explicit materials. We're just talking about this character is gay, or this teacher is gay and he's not allowed to tell a student that he's gay. Now I don't think that it is right or productive to call every Republican voter a racist because of that, because there are lots of reasons why a person might vote Republican that have nothing to do with that. But the fact of the matter is that if you are a racist, you are more likely to be a Republican voter. If you are a Republican politician, you will more likely than not enact legislation that hurts marginalized groups of people, including marginalized races. Thank you for your question, Joe T. Shark Tank says the Epstein list was out for the entire Biden's presidency and it wasn't released. I don't know if that's accurate, Shark Tank, but in I think it was 2017, Epstein said that Trump was his closest friend. So I don't know what you're trying to get at there. I'm just going to scroll to the bottom of these TikTok comments. Steve says liberals are racist towards white people. That's not true at all. And also, that's not a question. Caden says, "How do you feel about the United States of Israel?" There is no United States of Israel. There's Israel and there's the United States. And Israel has a lot of influence in politics in the United States, but it is not accurate to say that they control the United States. And if you do not want Israel to have as much control over the United States as it does, then you should vote for Democrats, because the Republican Party is fully on board with what Israel is doing and with all of the control that Israel is exerting over our politicians. Isaac King says, "Opinion on Kamala AOC's views on pew-pew restrictions based on red flag laws." I don't know about those specific policies, but I am in favor of common sense gun control legislation. Jace, how do you feel about Kerrville? I don't know what that is. Muzzle says, "Donald Trump is going to win the Nobel Peace Prize." That's probably not true. Muzzle. Also ask a question or I'm going to block you. I don't care if y'all have different political opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. I do not allow people to just spam the comments with pro-Trump garbage. Laver Galarga says Trump using hate groups like Oath Keepers and Patriots Front in ICE. Laver, I haven't seen any substantive reporting on that. I've heard people suggesting that on social media, but I haven't seen any news organizations reporting on that. And if you have a link to share, shoot me a DM because I'm interested in learning about that. Muzzle says typical liberal. That's not a question, Muzzle. So congratulations, you're out of here. I warned you as nicely as I could. Eric 1989 says next president, would you like a businessman or woman or a career politician? Eric, I don't know how substantive that question is. I just think that it should be a good person, somebody who is going to enact the platform of the Democratic Party. Joe T02 says, I respect you more than 99% of Democrats on social media. Thank you, Joe. But also, none of these people are real. Like, unless somebody's out there with their real ass fucking name and face speaking to you, and even then, some of those people might be paid bots and fucking troll farms, So take everything that you see on the internet with a grain of salt, Joe T. I don't believe that Republicans are the way that they are based on the way that Republicans act on social media. And I hope that you don't believe that Democrats are the way that they are based on the way that quote unquote Democrats behave on social media. The billionaire class wants us fighting amongst ourselves. And so they are incentivized to pay people to go on the internet and be the worst versions of themselves. And maybe there are some real people who are just, acting idiotic because of the incentive structures of social media where, engagement gets, rage gets engagement and likes and shit like that. So fights gets likes, that kind of thing. But it's not real. Like, none of it is real. Every Democrat in America and every Republican in America is probably a better person than we are giving them credit for. All right. Daddy69 says, you give power bottom vibes. That's not what I gave your mom last night. Tyrone Shoelaces says, do you think more racists coming out of the racist closet is a coincidence? I think that when you have somebody like Donald Trump, who is a vocal racist, in a position of power, and you have another vocal racist, Stephen Miller, acting as the shadow president, and they are doing just like racist sweeps of anybody who's even a little bit brown in America, then I think that it incentivizes other races to be more vocal. Caden says, do you think people with dual citizenship should be allowed to lobby in the U.S. government? I've heard this question before, Caden, and I gotta be honest, I don't know anything about. I don't know this. I don't know about this policy. I don't know if it's accurate or not. The way that it has been asked to me makes me feel like it might be a conspiracy theory, but I'll look into it. Send me a DM to remind me, hit me up on my Discord or email me through my website. Fidel Castro says, how do you feel about AIPAC not being registered under FARA? So I did just learn about this a little bit recently, where because of some loopholes and fancy wording, AIPAC does not have to register as a foreign actor. They claim to not be lobbying on behalf of Israel, but instead to be lobbying on behalf of the relationship between America and Israel, which sounds kind of like bullshit to me. Now, if that's something that you don't like, if you want there to be more restrictions on AIPAC, if you want to do something about the power that AIPAC has over our politicians, then you should vote for Democrats, because the Republican Party is fully on board with what AIPAC is doing. Kurt Pro says, how can you say vote Dem to stop the Israel support when Biden supported Israel as well? So Kurt Pro, what you're doing, what you're talking about is like, it's called cherry picking, like you have to look at the whole of what the parties are doing. And so you point to Biden, supporting Israel, right? But Trump is supporting Israel arguably more and worse than what Biden was doing. And there are other Republicans in the Republican Party who are, being vocal about being shitty to the people of Palestine and continuing to send money and weapons to Israel and stuff like that. On the whole, on the net, the Democratic Party is way better than the Republican Party on this, even if not every single Democrat has a perfect history on this issue. You should always be voting for better over worse, because the more people that do that, the better our government becomes. And then maybe we stop getting mid and we start getting good, and then maybe we start getting great instead. Let's see here. Hita Lick says, "What about ism 101? LOL, but Trump is worse." Hita, worse is worse, though. Like, what's worse, a paper cut or getting stabbed in the neck? Like, some things are worse and some things are better. It's not whataboutism to say that we need to look at things holistically and see which party and politicians are worse than other politicians. Whataboutism is going tit for tat, where somebody says Trump did this, and then you go, well, what about when Biden did this? And then somebody else goes, what about when Trump did this? And then somebody else goes, well, what about when Kamala did this? And then I say, well, what about when Ted Cruz did this? That's what whataboutism is. What is productive is taking the bird's eye view, is like looking at everything that the parties do, that all the politicians do, and seeing how things average out. All right, Caden says it's no policy. There are dual citizens that are lobbying in the government currently. Again, Caden, send me a link, send me a message on my email address, on my websites. Kurt Pro says, who the fuck is Ted Cruz? You're so lucky for not knowing who he is. Shay Cruel says, thoughts on pastors now being allowed to endorse a political candidate? So Shay Cruel, they've always have been allowed to. It is just that the IRS has come out and said that there is no legal justification for removing tax exempt status because churches decided to get involved in politics. And I think that's bad, Testic Call says, when do we coup? I don't believe that coups are productive. I think that it's way better to do nonviolent resistance. If we get 3.5% of the population engaged in nonviolent resistance, then we can stop our downward spiral into authoritarianism. Let's see here. Scrolling back up through some of these comments. Scrolling back up to some of these comments. Dan says, why are we acting like supporting Israel is not a good thing? So here's the thing, Dan, is that some people believe that supporting Israel is a good thing. Some people believe that supporting Israel is a bad thing. But I think that there are objective things that the government of Israel has done that everybody can agree with are bad. For example, they have been found guilty of doing war crimes against the people of Palestine, and there's no justification for that. Like, you're not allowed to do war crimes just because somebody did war crimes against you. Now, we already have a law in the books that says that America is not allowed to send money or weapons to countries, governments that are guilty of doing war crimes, and so it is illegal and immoral for us to continue supporting the Netanyahu government of Israel because they have been found guilty of doing war crimes. But, one could argue that it is necessary to support the people living in Israel, the same way that one could argue that it is necessary and, in fact, morally just to protect the people of Palestine and Iran. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok messages. Hita Lick says, why are we talking about war crimes like if that exists, no country cares about international law? Well, people care about it if people care about it. Hita, it's like, there's no magical robots that enforce laws. Humans have to do that. And what politicians and world leaders get away with is whatever the citizens of the world allow them to get away with. So if we decide to make a big deal out of war crimes, then war crimes will be a big deal. If we decide to support the International Criminal Court, then them deciding, having warrants out for the arrest of Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin will have much more weight. If we give more weight to the United Nations, things like that will have more weight. But your kind of like cynical attitude about like who gives a shit, everything is terrible, is not productive. That's how bad people get away with things, is because people become cynical and think that all hope is lost. Marcia, good to see you again. Do you believe that there is no Epstein list? I don't know if there is. I kind of don't care. The things that are important to know are that Epstein's lawyers were the exact same as Trump's lawyers, that the guy that gave Epstein the sweetheart deal in Florida, that gave him almost no jail time for doing, for doing pediatric shit, was the same, was like Trump's commerce secretary or something like that. In 2017, Epstein told a reporter that Donald Trump was his closest friend. So that's the stuff that I think is really important. Lori RN says, can you explain AIPAC and why so many people are against it? Absolutely. So AIPAC is an organization that is supposedly, it's a lobbying organization. So they put a lot of money into campaigns and, petitioning elected leaders to enact certain policies. But what they do is essentially advocate for the things that the government of Israel wants. Now, that would normally make that group have to register as a foreign agent, as an agent of a foreign government. But APAC uses a loophole that is really kind of shady, saying, oh, we're not lobbying for Israel, we are lobbying for the relationship between Israel and America. And they claim to be like against anti-Semitism, but really they just use anti-Semitism as a cudgel. Like they just use it to take down politicians that they don't like. So let's say that you've got a progressive Democrat who believes that we should not continue sending money and weapons to Israel because they have been found guilty of doing war crimes by the International Criminal Court. Then APAC will put a ton of money into that election to get that Democrats to lose their primary or their general election or stuff like that. They're extremely powerful. They have access to tons of money. And so a lot of people, I think, rightly have a problem with the amount of influence that APAC has over our elected leaders. Because, you know, they can lose your election just based on where they decide to put their money and attention. You're welcome, Lori. Thank you for your question. Lovely says, stop spitting on the mic. No, my mic likes it. My mic's a freak. My mic likes getting spit on. My mic's dirty like that. The Nexus Mind says, when is it acceptable to go to war? You snipe things you don't like. Try creating a solution. When is it acceptable to go to war? You know, that's a difficult question. The Nexus Mind, and thank you for it, even though you decided to end it with, you know, a jibe at me for no fucking reason. I'm just here answering people's questions as nicely as I can. But yeah, I don't know. I think that when is it acceptable to go to war? I think if a country tries to invade you, I think if a country is, I don't know, threatening bioweapons or chemical weapons against neighboring countries. I think that if you know, if we decide to engage in multilateral governance, global governance, where we all have each other's back, then if, you know, one country gets invaded by another country that's just trying to expand their empire, then we should all go to war against that country to stop them, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't love war or violence or death or destruction or anything like that. There are probably many examples of just wars in history, but yeah, it's just all death and senseless, you know, violence and destruction. So, you know, everything should be done to try to avoid it. Spectator says, why do we support a broken war system that left us all in debt as well as our kids for generations? I don't know, Spectator. But if you don't care for it, then you should vote for Democrats, because Democrats are better on this issue than Republicans are. Truth Matters says, is it not rich that Netanyahu, a whole war criminal, nominated Donald J. Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize? Yeah, you know, it's bullshit. It's hypocritical. It's going nowhere, you know. The two of them are both psychotic pieces of shit who have hurt and killed many, many people through direct or indirect action. So yeah, fuck them both, you know. Spectator says, really? Dems and Republicans put us in debt, sir. Yes, but Republicans are way worse on this issue. Republicans tend to balloon the deficit by factors of like 3 or 4. And Democrats then come in and they balloon the deficit, trying to, you know, put out all the fires that the Republicans just started. Tio says, Democrats are just as war hungry. Obama did strikes like no other. Tio, I've said this before, I'll say this again. You can nitpick and cherry pick specific Democratic actions to sell your perspective, but what's important is looking at the bird's eye view, the 360 perspective. You got to look at the net of what all politicians do, what the mandates of the various parties are, what the platforms of the various parties are. And if you look at that, if you look at the net, the Democratic Party is way better on this issue. The Democratic Party invests in diplomacy and embassies and a State Department that actually does things. They normalize relations with Iran and Cuba and did Paris Climate Accord and tried to empower the UN. You know, there are mistakes and there are things that Democratic presidents have done that do not align with an anti-war and anti-military industrial complex platform, but that does not mean that Republicans are better on this issue or the same. Republicans are worse on this issue. Vinny Boombats. Hey, you're fucking what's his name's doctor? Fucking hey, I get no respect. You're Rodney Dangerfield's doctor. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Vinny Boombats says if I wanted to know about politics, I wouldn't ask anyone whose last name ends with Stein. All right, well, not allowing that kind of anti-Semitism into my live stream, so fucking remove that name from your mouth. Fucking how dare you take the work of a beloved one-liner comedian like Rodney Dangerfield as your avatar just to say some fucking anti-Semitic shit, you know? Nexus Mind says, who determines a just war, or which of those with opposing views of justice are unjust? There's no like specific agency or human being that does this, and people are allowed to have different opinions about this, Nexus Mind. But yeah, I'm not claiming to be the sage of what a just war or a just war isn't. You know, I think we can all call obvious balls and strikes, you know, like the Revolutionary War, probably a just war. The Civil War, probably a just war. Russia trying to take over Ukraine for no fucking reason, unjust war. Let's see here. Dan says, do you think we should support Ukraine despite all the war crimes they've committed? I have not seen any substantive reporting, Dan, to suggest that Ukraine has committed any war crimes. It is much more likely, and I've seen a lot more reporting to say that Russia is the one doing the war crimes, and egregious war crimes as well, like stealing tens of thousands of children from Ukrainian families. Like that's fucking psychotic, man. Dan, Ukraine abusing POWs. Yeah, I haven't seen any of that reporting. Dan, I believe that's probably inaccurate. You know, I would question where you get your sources. Dan says Russia's war crimes are much worse, but they both do it. Okay. Well, again, I haven't seen that reporting, but also, you know, yeah. I don't know. We should be supporting the side that is more just, you know. It is my philosophy that better is better and worse is worse, and that we should always support better, even if it is the enemy of the perfect. Spectator says, so you're a puppet that thinks only the Republicans are the problem, right? Nope. Spectator, don't know why you would say something like that. Seems like you're trying to start a fight, Spectator, instead of engaging in good faith. Tyro Pillar, good to see you again. If we had fantasy legislature and track their progress like fantasy football, we'd probably be in a better place. Yeah, I don't hate that idea. Dan says we should obviously support Ukraine, but the same standards should apply to Israel. Oh, I see what you're saying, Dan. And, you know, I think that it is a complicated issue, but I do still believe that there is a difference. There's a difference between a country like Ukraine that is trying to protect itself from a bad faith actor like Russia that is doing wild ass fucking war crimes, and Israel, which is the most powerful nation in that region, subjecting the citizens of Palestine to apartheid, creating an open air prison, basically, you know, pushing them into the hands of Hamas. And I don't know if you've seen this reporting that, according to people in the Qatari government, that Netanyahu has been using Qatar to funnel money to Hamas because he views them as a very valuable foil to have. So yeah, you know, like, you know, Netanyahu empowering Hamas to do war crimes against Israel so that Israel can do war crimes against Palestine, I think is a much different scenario than Russia deciding that they want to take over Ukraine and the Ukrainians deciding to fight back. And again, I don't know if they have done war crimes, but, you know, I think it is shitty if they have. Alrighty. Scrolling down to the bottom here. Devin Talk says, can I come up for debate, sir? I don't do debates, Devin, but sometimes I bring people up if I know that they are here in good faith. So stick around, ask a couple questions. Maybe I'll change my mind. DJ Gox says, who started the war between Russia and Ukraine? Russia started it. Let's see here. W. Page, good to see you again. Roxy says, don't we side with countries that are on the United Nations list, basically? Not always, Roxy. I could be wrong about that. Spectator said, you said that the Republicans put us in debt, not the Dems. That is not what I said, Spectator. I said that both parties have put us in debt, but that the Republicans are way worse on that issue, that they They have tripled the deficit whenever they've been in office, and then Democrats then have to spend some money in order to put out the fires that the Republicans start. But yeah, the debt is the fault of both parties. It's just more the fault of the Republican Party because they are constantly cutting taxes for billionaires, cutting regulations for their businesses, cutting taxes for their businesses, subsidizing extremely profitable businesses already. Spectator. So I don't really believe that you're here in good faith, but prove to me that you are. Engage with what I just told you. Oh, somebody just asked, why is Alligator Alcatraz bad? DJ says, why is Alligator Alcatraz so bad? Okay, so the issue with Alligator Alcatraz is that it is part of the ICE world. And ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has for a long time been a rogue agency. They have been acting lawlessly, immorally, unconstitutionally. If you want a full breakdown of everything that ICE has done wrong in recent history, I would recommend Chris Murphy had a question that he gave to Kristi Noem about her agency. So if you look up Chris Murphy ICE speech, you'll probably get it. But yeah, if you want more than that, hit me up on my Discord or email me through my website or something like that. And so in empowering ICE by giving them more facilities like Alligator Alcatraz, we are basically saying to them, here's a place where you can put people and you can abuse them with no oversight. The conditions can be terrible and you can do forced labor on them like a concentration camp. The people that study this, people that study World War II and, fascism and concentration camps and shit like that, they are the ones who are saying that CCOT and Alligator Alcatraz and shit like that are concentration camps, that we are currently, America, under Trump right now, is sending people to concentration camps. So, that's bad, right? Like, can we all agree that concentration camps are bad, Alrighty. Roxy says Republicans are for billionaires and Democrats are for the individual people. That is accurate. Devin Talk says, is Trump cutting butthole care? Yeah, butthole care is part of healthcare, Devin Talks. And the Trump administration has made massive cuts to healthcare. So yeah, our poor buttholes are going to be having to spend more money on our butthole creams. The Nexus Mind says, do you believe Russia, Ukraine, and the UN are trying hard enough to find a diplomatic solution to Ukraine-Russia? I believe that Ukraine and the UN are, but I do not believe that Putin has any desire to end that war. I think that he wants to take over Ukraine, and then he wants to continue invading other border nations and eventually NATO nations. And yeah, I think he wants to take over that entire section of the globe and have a new USSR situation happening. So yeah, I don't think you can negotiate with somebody who, like Vladimir Putin, who doesn't want the war to end. Devin Talks, is Trump a good man? No. Easiest question I've answered in my entire fucking life. Dan, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. All right. Mr. Swift Crashmore says America needs its own CCOT. Well, first of all, your spelling is atrocious, Mr. Swift Crashmore. Second of all, that's a terrible thing to say. Third of all, ask a question or I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question. Be part of the conversation. JD says, has voting become a Republican versus Democrat rather than America versus major issues in our country? Has voting become a Republican versus Democrat rather than America versus major issues in our country? I think that's a pretty accurate thing to say, JD. Yeah, I don't think there's it's not a controversial thing to say that we become very polarized and calcified in our views here. And I think that there's a culture of owning the other side that I don't think is productive. Ideally, what you would have is a common understanding of what the problems are and just disagreements on what the potential solutions to those problems could be, and then us voting on the people who oh motherfucker, Well. Guess what, everybody? I have been voted. I have been reported for misinformation, and I have been taken off of TikTok. Now, this is something that happens regularly because people on the right do not like the fact that I tell the truth on social media. So, I have appealed the decision, and now we just kind of have to wait for. Now we just have to wait for me to get my access back, because that is where 99% of my questions come from. So if you are watching this on Twitch, if you are watching this on YouTube, and you have a question that you want to ask, now's the time to ask it as I wait for my appeal to be decided on, because I almost always win the appeals. So I just kind of have to wait for that to happen. Tyro says, if the police department found its backbone and started detaining ICE agents for investigation, how would that play out? I would be concerned about that, Tyro. I would be concerned that the Trump administration would use the military to back up ICE to fight local law enforcement. Yeah, it's a terrifying perspective. It is a terrifying hypothetical situation. It's just, yeah, man. Yeah, because I don't see where local law enforcement could push the Trump administration in a way that would actually get them to back down. I think that they would just, what's the word? I think that they would just double down, and continue to escalate things. All right. But thank you for your question, Tyro. Thank you for being here as per usual. I'm still waiting to find out how my appeal is going over on TikTok. So, yeah. Any questions out there in TikTok or in Twitch or YouTube worlds? This is the time to ask your questions about politics. Until I can get back on TikTok and come on, I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting on my appeal. Come on, man. It doesn't usually take this long. All right. Gotta keep on waiting. All right, so yeah, anybody has any questions about politics, this is the time to ask. Jump in the comments and ask me your questions about politics. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics, regardless of how complicated or simple they might be. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I do not believe in making people feel stupid or ashamed for not knowing things or trying to learn things. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. And we're back, baby! We are back on TikTok. Joining the live stream now. I cannot wait to tell everybody on TikTok that I am back, baby. All right, welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics, everybody. My name is Jarrett. I am here to answer all of your questions about politics. I don't believe in fighting. I don't believe in roasting or debating. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it can be like trying to learn a new language. So this is the place where you can go to get all of your questions about politics answered, and there's no judgments, there's no roasting, there's no debating. I don't fight with people. That's not what I'm here for. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics, because I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can be really confusing. There's all these different words and last names and abbreviations that if you don't know where to look that stuff up, if you don't have that information already at your fingertips, it can be really hard to follow along with what is going on in our government and what is going on with our elected officials. It can be really difficult to connect the dots between things that are happening in our real life and the decisions that our elected leaders are making, and the things that are happening in local, federal, what do you call it? Governments, and so that is what I'm doing here, everybody. I am just here to answer your questions about politics, and then maybe we can all be a little bit better informed, and maybe we can all be, a little bit more engaged. Batboy says, is the two-party system just control? One party messes up, we run to the other, same game, same outcome. No, Batboy. I do not believe that is an accurate assessment. There are massive differences between the political parties. There are massive differences between their platforms, between the integrity of their politicians, and between outcomes. Like if you look at the country, or if you look at states that are run by Democrats or Republicans, you see vastly different outcomes. Like the deficit is always ballooned during Republican administrations because they always massively cut taxes for the billionaire class. If you look at the statewide level, blue states have higher quality of life, better medical outcomes, better education, better social services, things like that. So yeah, I don't believe in the both sides of the same perspective. I actually think that it's probably damaging because it gives cover to the worst actors. Like if you're trying to decide between dating two people, and one of them is John Wayne Gacy, and somebody says all men are the same, then you are basically giving John Wayne Gacy a better chance, as opposed to saying John Wayne Gacy is really, really bad. So whoever this other guy is, you should go for them. Dan Blackroyd, they're coming for your live. That means you've arrived. Man, it happens all the fucking time, man. They report me for misinformation. I appeal. I win the appeal, and I'm back. DJS says any theocracy needs to be taken down. I agree with that, but it has to happen from within the country, because if we go in there and we try to overthrow theocracies, then all that happens is those countries descend into chaos. OG Gen X65 says Democrats more like Gacy. That is wildly inaccurate thing that you just said, OG Gen X. And also ask a question or I'm going to block you. I don't care if you have different political opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. I'm not here to get into fights with people on the right. I'm not here to get into fights with a both sides person or a tanky or whatever. If you don't think that I'm allowed to call myself both a progressive and a Democrat, like I'm not here to fight, guys. I'm just here to engage in good faith so that we can all be fucking better to each other and have a much more productive conversation about what's going on in the government and stuff like that. Tariq90 says, theocracy, doesn't the U.S. support the Saudi government, close allies? Yeah, 100%, but there's no, I don't believe that being dogmatic about some of these things is, beneficial. I think that there are a lot of reasons why we should be reevaluating our relationship with the Saudi government, and them being a theocracy is just one of many reasons, let's see here. Kat says, do you support ICE? No, I do not. Opposites. I do not support ICE. Let's see here. Tariq90 says, Saudi Arabia is objectively worse than Iran. I don't know. An argument could be made, I'm sure. I'm not going to die on that mountain. Joyce says, how do we think we get out of this mess we are in? How do I think we get out of this mess that we are in? Joyce, the way that we get out of this is that people like you and me do the work to get out of this. So long as we're actually out there doing the work, then we get out of this. Then we stop this sliding into authoritarianism and fascism. But people like you and me have to do the work. It's not about the Democrats having the perfect messaging strategy. It's not about Democratic leadership getting replaced. It is about people like you and me doing the work. And if you want to know what the work is, I can go into it, but I have the whole thing written out on my Discord channel. That's the easiest way to look up what the work is. Joyce says, I am trying. I appreciate you trying. Kat says, me either. Check the link in my bio, please, and share. It's a great resource for ICE right now. JD says, Alligator Alcatraz a concentration camp. JD, the people that study concentration camps say that 100% Alligator Alcatraz is a concentration camp. JD says, we the people don't have any inputs in it. Do you believe that voting actually matters? Yes, JD, voting is the most important thing. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which is only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women who are dead today because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. So yes, there are people right now suffering in fucking concentration camps who have done zero crimes, who were here legally. Some of them are veterans, some of them are citizens. Those people will 100% tell you that voting makes a difference, because without voting or not voting, those people would not be there right now. Those women would still be alive. All right. Tariq90 says, Jared, you are a smart man. Stop pushing propaganda that Dems are a viable alternative. They are, though, Tariq. I can give you a laundry list of amazing things the Democratic Party has done in the past, decade or so. I don't believe in the doomerist, cynical view of the Democratic Party as being terrible. The Democratic Party is a big tent, and so we have people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, and we also have Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer's, and we have the African American caucus and the Jewish caucus and the LGBTQ caucus and the Latin American caucus. It is the party of America because it represents all the different colors of America. Let's see here. Pastiche Painter says the big tent of Israel. If you do not think that Israel should have as much of an influence in American politics as it does, then you should vote for Democrats because they are better on that issue. JD says also, who are we in debt to? We keep spending money, but they always bring up debts after terms. I mean, it depends. Like sometimes we do borrow money from other countries, but mostly it is the money that we owe ourselves. It is the money that we have spent that we have not yet accumulated in tax dollars, so we kind of borrow it and then pay an interest on that. Let's see here. Democrats, Demon Rats, and Republicans says get some sleep. I got plenty of sleep with your mom last night. Let's see here. CA Alex, good to see you again. Will Trump negotiate peace for Gaza? No, he will not. He does not give a shit about peace for Gaza. He believes in ethnically cleansing Gaza. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Smiles says 16% rating. What does that mean, Smiles? Righty. All right, welcome to the live stream, everybody. Dean Golf says, what's your thoughts on the whole there is no Epstein client list ordeal? I don't know if there is an Epstein list. I don't know if there isn't an Epstein list. I kind of don't really give a shit. The things that I think are important to keep in mind about Epstein is that in 2017, he told a reporter that he was Trump's closest friend. He also got a sweetheart deal from a prosecutor in Florida after he was found guilty of doing, pedophilias and shit like that. And that guy that gave him that sweetheart deal ended up being Trump's first commerce secretary. So that's pretty interesting, I think. And then, his lawyers were the same as Trump's lawyers, like guys like Alan Dershowitz, like they all work together. User Robot Number says, because of your political views, have you personally experienced violence? Yes. Nothing that I've had to call the police about or anything like that, but just, there's been some struggle, but not a ton. Let's see here. Joyce says, I'm so proud to be a Democrat. I can't imagine not giving a shit about anyone but myself. Yeah, I'm with you. Joyce. PDF file. Thank you, Dan Blackbird. I was looking for that. Pastiche Painter says, issue is yes, Republicans are absolute worst, but Dems are controlled. Opposition to absorb resistance. That is inaccurate, Pastiche Painter. We have the actual politicians in the Democratic Party who are standing up to both the centrists and the Republicans. It's not controlled opposition. It's just people aren't voting for Democrats enough because our systems are weighted in favor of the Republican Party, I understand where that idea comes from, Pastiche Painter, but it's just fully inaccurate. Yeah. If you want me to go into more detail on that, Pastiche Painter, I will. I don't love wasting my breath on people who are just here to fight with me. But if you're open to learning things and engaging, then I will 100% get into it with you. Demon Rats and Republicans says Democrats showed their true colors when they voted against impeaching Trump. That is inaccurate, Demon Rats. Please stop or I'm going to have to boot you. CA Alex says, is violence necessary to overthrow oppressive systems? No. In fact, if you look up a political scientist named Erica Chenoweth, she argues, and in my opinion, very persuasively, that nonviolent resistance movements are infinitely more productive and have a lot more success than violent resistance movements. And all we need in order to enact our policy goals would be to activate 3.5% of the American population to nonviolent resistance. Let's see here. Demon Rats says, it was on the news. What do you mean? Yes, but it's not cut and dry, Demon Rats. It's not black and white. It is much more complicated than you're making it out to be. I don't want to waste my breath. If you are just here to fight and prove me wrong, just because of your avatar and your screen name, I kind of believe that you're not here in good faith. But, prove me wrong, my man. Prove me wrong. Let me see here. Pastiche Painter, I see you. I'm going to get to you. Dean Golf says, what are your cons against Democrats? I don't love the centrist gerontocracy. I would love for them to get voted out. Let's see here. Levi says, what do you think about the big, beautiful bill? It is terrible. It is a massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich. It is going to make all of our electricity and healthcare costs more expensive. Hospitals are going to be closing in rural areas. Drug treatment centers are closing. Suicide prevention centers are closing. It's going to be terrible. Let's see here. Okay, so All right. Yeah, Demon Rats, still waiting for you to tell me if I should engage with you or not. But Pastiche Painter. So, if there was only controlled resistance from the Democratic Party, then we would not see actual productive demonstration coming out of the Democratic Party. It would only just be trying, and failing. But there is a massive list of Democratic wins, both during the Obama administration and the Biden administration, and on the statewide level, that show you there is a real productive difference between the two political parties. Joe Biden, his NLRB was siding with the unions for the first time in like a generation. His Federal Trade Commission was breaking apart monopolies. He lowered healthcare costs. He capped the cost of insulin. He capped the cost of asthma inhalers. These are not performative, opposition party moves. These are real pieces of legislation that have really affected people's lives for the better. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act. There are women who are dead today because of abortion bans. Like, those are very real substantive differences, not performative obstruction. Let's see here. Demon Rats and Republicans says Democrats, Democrats and Republicans. Well, congratulations, Demon Rats. You have proved that you are not here in good faith, so I'm blocking you. Congratulations, you were warned. Quim says, are there any big businesses that support Democrats? Yeah, I'm sure there are. But the biggest businesses and most billionaires support the Republican Party. CA Alex says, thoughts on free speech crackdown in UK regarding the PLA? I don't know enough about that, CA Alex. I'm so sorry. I'm not up on UK politics as much. Jack says, can't believe that most of Congress is taking money from AIPAC. Shaking my head. That's my biggest issue by far. It's not that they're taking money. It's that AIPAC will give money to a primary challenger or your challenger in the general election if they don't like you. AIPAC controls the way that some billionaires spend their campaign finance dollars. So they can lose you your election in addition to getting you painted as an anti-Semite. They have a lot of power. It's not just that every politician is corrupt and taking money from AIPAC. Quim says, aren't there any moderate Republicans you wouldn't mind seeing become Democrats? Sure, absolutely. The problem that I have with the Republican Party is that at their base, the best Republican is still standing for trickle-down economics and deregulation. And that's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's bullshit to give billionaires more money, to cut social services. It is bullshit to allow a chemical factory to spill runoff into our drinking water because the free market's going to solve that. Private healthcare is bullshit. Trickle-down economics is bullshit. Cutting regulations for massive corporations, loopholes for massive corporations, subsidies for massive corporations. The fact that people that work for Walmart need to be on welfare because they're not being paid enough because the Republican Party doesn't believe in raising the minimum wage. That's all. That's what the best Republicans believe. So yeah, be the most right-wing Democrats. Let us at least have the gavel in the Senate and in the House. But I am not going to support you if those are your policies. Not even a little bit. Alrighty. All right, Tyro Pillar over on YouTube says the White House has a frequently asked questions with misinformation about the BBB. How do we combat against that? Tyro, the only way that we can combat against that is by telling people about it in real life. The internet has been completely captured by the billionaire class, so no matter how many videos or live streams we do, we're going to get drowned out by billionaire-funded propaganda saying that the big, beautiful bill is incredible and that all the problems that you're feeling are because of trans kids and immigrants and shit like that. The only way that we fight that misinformation is in person, because that is the one advantage that we have over the billionaire class. There are more of us than there are of them. All right, Timmy Tim 821 says, what are plans when this app switches to M2? I don't know. Oreo 20 says, who is the watchdog for Congress and can we oust them for unethical practices? Ideally, there should be a lot of checks and balances within the government, like oversight committees and the Office of Management and Budget, I believe is what the OMB is. Yeah. But, at the simplest form, we are oversight for Congress. We vote out the people that we don't like. We vote for different people in the primary if it's the party that we like, but we just don't like the person, you know. Jacob Berger says, "Are you bringing up guests?" I almost never do that, Jacob Berger. But if you prove to me that you're here in good faith, stick around for a little while, ask a couple questions, then maybe I'll change my mind. Heath Miller says, "Who should we support for better food in this country?" Democrats. Anthony Alemo 839 says, "I get zero content that says the BBB is good, so I don't know what billionaire class is propagating y'all." Anthony, so billionaire funded propaganda works in a couple of different ways. It sees what fits with you. Maybe you're not the kind of person who would believe some video that says the BBB is great, but maybe you're the kind of person that believes both parties are the same. Maybe you're the kind of person that believes voting doesn't do anything. Maybe you're the kind of person that believes the lesser of two evils is still evil. You know, billionaire propaganda works in a bunch of different ways. It will get you to either vote for Republicans or not vote, or waste a lot of your time just arguing with other people on the internet, perpetuating the idea that Democrats are like this or Republicans are like that in a way that makes it seem like the fight is really between us voters, when the fight is voters versus the billionaires. For Eliza says, "Why are Democrats so scared of Trump?" I don't think they are. Lisa says, "Grown man begging for gifts on TikTok." I haven't done that once. Quinn says, "Not to get crazy, but do you believe there is powers higher up that we don't see that control our government?" I mean, it's almost every conspiracy is impossible because people are not that smart, not that well organized, and can't keep their mouths shut. So if there is a conspiracy, it is the billionaire class. It is a bunch of billionaires who have been working really hard to stay anonymous. Quim, read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer. It will completely elucidate you as to the structure and reality of a generation-long campaign by the billionaire class to deconstruct the government so that they don't have to pay taxes and they can poison us all with chemical runoffs from their factories. CA Alex says, "Is anti-Zionism equivalent to anti-Semitism?" So I object to the use of that sort of like semantics, CA Alex, because depending on who you ask, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, because the definition of anti-Zionism can mean different things to different people. Some people believe anti-Zionism means that Israel should not be trying to invade its neighboring countries, while other people believe that anti-Zionism means that we should kill everybody in Israel, or at least move them to a different country and then give Israel back to the Palestinians and shit like that. So I don't believe that semantic arguments are productive. I think we just need to be more specific about what we're talking about. So, you know, if somebody says socialism is bad, ask them, what do you think socialism is? If somebody says globalize the Antifada means violence, say to them, well, what do you feel about all the people who believe that it is advocating for nonviolence? You know, it's this exact same tactic that people used during the Black Lives Matter, where people were saying like Black Lives Matter means that only Black Lives Matter, and everybody was like, no, that's not what it means. But you know, because it was a phrase that could be turned into something else, it was. Noah says, "Is Trump putting laxatives in my water that make me shorter?" I wouldn't put it past him. Velvet Thunder says, "Will the U.S. recover from the damage Trump has done and will continue to do?" Yes, Velvet Thunder, if people like me and you do the work, if citizens do the work of undoing the damage, of electing better people, of organizing and activating and recruiting and convincing, then yes, we will 100% survive this, and we will 100% undo the damage. But if we all just sit around and hope and pray for someone to come save us, then no, we would just continue our descent into fascist hell. Let's see here. Some emoji that kind of looks like a gun, but I can't really tell. Who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballot. Let's see here. Rena's World says Judaism is against Zionism. I don't know if I agree with that. And also, those words mean different things to different people. Timmy says, "How did you become educated? What's your credentials?" I'm a college graduate, but mostly I just learn all this stuff because I read the news regularly. Teo says, "Why do you keep using the word fascism? It only devalues its meaning." I mean, people that study fascism will tell you that this is fascism. Like, we are currently seeing fascism. So yeah, I don't believe that it devalues words by calling a thing its name. So yeah, you know, yeah. Sorry. Azul says, we're all pretty much on the same page regarding no wars. The government should keep us safe and be for the people. Squidball says, is Elon creating another party? He says he is, but he's also dumb and never follows through on things, so I don't think he's actually going to. Let's see here. Alex Johnson says, what happened to your other live? Did someone report you? Yes, they did. They reported me for misinformation. I appealed the decision. I won the decision, and now I am back. This is something that people on the right like to do to me because they do not like me coming on here and telling the truth about things. Joyce says, what do you think about the Rockland County, New York? I think that it is interesting. It has made me much less skeptical that vote totals were actually changed. But we can't jump to conclusions. We have to wait and see how Discovery turns out. And then we can start saying things like, okay, maybe Harris actually did win the election. I swear Miller saw the last episode of The Boys, and that's how we ended up here. Yeah, potentially. Soulven says, if Trump wasn't on the list, we all know he'd have sued Elon by now. Accurate. Edgar says, people who say repeating a word devalues it are wrong. Yeah. Oreo20 says, liberals equals choice. I think I know what you're talking about. And I think that oh, liberals equals communism. Oh, yeah, you're responding to JB76. JB76, how do you define communism? Badger75 says, what is time frame for changing federal taxes? The taxes, the cuts to billionaires that happened in the quote-unquote Big Beautiful Bill happened, I believe, this year. But the cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and everything, they happen earlier than that, but no later than 2026. Let's see here. Azul says, so I think if millions of us hit the streets, demand stop funding Israel and stop wasting billions. I think that that's a great idea, Azul, but protesting is only part of it. We also have to vote. We also have to put political pressure on our elected representatives. We have to, put political pressure on other powerful people, people that CEOs and massive corporations. We need to. There's more than one thing. Protesting is just one thing. We have to do everything. ADA says, where is America heading? If people don't do the work, it is heading in the garbage. If people do the work, then we can get out of this mess. Azul says, I don't think we have time for that anymore. We only have time for that, Azul. There's no end date. There's no amount of fascist authoritarian takeover that we the people cannot survive and emerge out of. It'll just become more difficult. The more people don't do the work right now, the harder it will be for us to do the work in the future. If we're not yelling now, we will have to whisper then. So yeah, it is just doing the work, and if everybody hit the streets and demanded that we stop funding Israel, I don't think that would necessarily do it. If every single citizen of America did that and then they just went back to living their regular lives the next day, nobody's gonna care about that. The Trump administration is not gonna fucking shake a finger at that. Let's see here. Timmy says, is there a point to protest? What was the point of the No Kings protest? It seems like it didn't do anything. So Timmy, protests are extremely valuable, but they're only one tool that we have. It does have productive effect. It does communicate a message. It does create unity and a sense of community, and it makes people know that they're not alone, that they're not crazy, reading the news every day and seeing all this fucking bullshit that's happening, and people not freaking out. Like, why aren't we all freaking out about this? Going to a protest is seeing thousands, millions of potential people who all feel the same way and affirm this is not normal. We are not the crazy ones. We are powerful. We are many. We are massive. We can do this. But then we have to do other things as well. We have to do the activating and organizing and convincing and boycotting. We have to work with groups like Indivisible and Run for Something and Vote Save America. If there's anybody watching this that lives in Arizona or North Carolina or Texas, Vote Save America is recruiting candidates right now. And so if you are living in one of those states and you want help launching a campaign, all of these resources are available to you right now that have never been available before. You can hit up Run for Something. You can hit up Vote Save America. Specifically in those three states, North Carolina, Texas, and Arizona. If you want to run for something in those states, go to Vote Save America and do some shit, Scotty. Do some shit. The Nexus Mind says, what is your solution to our national debt? Tax billionaires use that money to ease the financial burden of the lower class. The lower class will then spend money, which will increase tax revenue, which will then go back into the systems. It is a bottom-up approach to economics. It has worked many times in the past, but more importantly, we are currently in the middle of 50 years of trickle-down economics not working. So just do the opposite of that. Alrighty. Pastiche Painter says, do you think armed resistance makes politicians more open to negotiating with the nonviolent protesters like the Black Panthers versus MLK? You know, it's an interesting theory, Pastiche Painter, and I used to be of the mind that we need both. We need the peaceful protesters and we need the non-peaceful protesters to give the peaceful protesters more validity. But the longer that I live, the more I look at what's going on in the world, the more that I see how one Waymo being set on fire completely invalidates the millions of other people who were completely peaceful during the No Kings protest, the more I believe that nonviolent resistance is the only solution, is the most valuable solution that we have. But yeah, you know, I understand why it might feel that way, why it might look that way. But, you know, if you look at the way that the Black Lives Matter movement ushered in a new era of extreme police actions, you know, where we voted out a bunch of Republicans from federal government, but then we voted in people like Eric Adams because he was a cop and people were really worried about crime going up and shit like that. So yeah, you know, it's just too easy to weaponize. It's too easy for the right to weaponize any kind of violence or chaos or disruption or anything like that. Gabe Horn says, can children consent? No, they cannot. The Nexus Mind says, what is your definition of due process? I mean, I don't have the, you know, technical dictionary definition at my fingertips, but I guess just, you know, if you accuse somebody of a crime, then you should have to prove that they did that crime, and they should be given the opportunity to prove that they're innocent. You know, that seems you know, at its core, that is what it is. James says, should we defund the police as the left desires? So the left does not desire defunding the police. Certain people in the left desire that, but that is not part of the Democrats' policy platform. But I do think that we need to use the police budget more specifically, because the police get sent out on a bunch of calls that they're not trained to handle. You know, like people that are suffering from mental health issues, that the cops should not be sent to that. You know, just domestic disputes that are nonviolent, that just need people who are, you know, crisis. What do you call it? You know, people who cool down the situation. I forget the name for it. But yeah, there are a bunch of ways that we can break down the police department into various different branches that actually address more specific problems, so that we don't have, you know, just like these massive police budgets that just are, you know, sending out these cops to try to, you know, deal with people having mental health breakdowns, and then they just end up shooting the person. You know, like, doesn't seem de-escalate. Thank you, Harry Steinheiler. Let's see here. Chris Garcia says, how bad is the big beautiful bill? Very, very, very bad, Chris Garcia. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for all of your questions. Thank you very much for all of your support. I really appreciate it, everybody. Chucky Arla says, is there any other answer besides both sides as to why Biden nor Trump will release the Epstein list? So, Chucky Arla, I do not believe that this is a both sides issue. I don't know if there is an Epstein list. I don't know if there is evidence that is being held from the public. I think that what we do know is that Epstein had the same lawyers as Trump, guys like Alan Dershowitz. We know that the guy that cut the sweetheart deal for Epstein in Florida ended up being Trump's first Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary, or something like that. And yeah, we know that in 2017, Epstein said that Trump was his closest friend. You know, so yeah, I don't know. I don't believe that this is a both sides issue. All right. I appreciate y'all being here. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. My DMs are open, so hit me up with questions. If there's any information that you think is valuable that I'm not taking into consideration, feel free to shoot that over to me. You can also email me through my website. My website is a great resource for if you want to see my schedule, if you want to see me do stand-up, if you want to send me a question, if you want to shop at my store, if you want to join my Patreon, all that shit is on my website. If you want to do the work, if you want to actually be part of the solution, go to my Discord. I have a thread posted called The Work that is all the things that you can do. And it is as much or as little as you want to do, as you have time for. But the key is we got to recruit people to do this stuff. We have to have as many people doing this as possible. That is how we make change happen. By activating just 3.5% of the American population, we can make this positive change happen. I do not believe that we should be forgiving to the Republican politicians that have voted for the big, beautiful bill, that are allowing Trump to do all of the wildly illegal and corrupt and unconscionable things that he is doing. And so I believe that we need to unelect every Republican politician, from president down to dog catcher. I think it is the only just thing that we can do. I think it is the only way to get the Republican Party to not be so extreme, is for them to suffer massive electoral consequences going into the midterms, going into 2028 as well. So help me be part of that goal. Help me to unelect every Republican, because they need to pay a political price for what they have done, for the shit that they are putting us through, for giving us all fucking more gray hairs and stressing away decades of our fucking life, for the human rights violations, for deporting people who have done no fucking crimes, for building concentration camps, for allowing Trump to take billions of dark money donations from his fucking cryptocurrency bullshit. That shit is wildly illegal. For the billionaire class stealing money from our fucking pockets and the Republican Party allowing that to happen, they should never be able to hold public office ever again. So vote them out of existence, guys. Be part of that crusade. And we need to recruit other people to do that as well. We gotta get numbers, guys. We gotta be pulling in numbers, Zixie says a one-party system is called a monarchy. I mean, it would if the Democratic Party wasn't a rainbow coalition, because the Democratic Party is not a monolith the way the Republican Party is. The Republican Party has people in it that were saying like, "Oh, I'm never voting for the big beautiful bill ever, 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 ever," and then 98% of them voted for it. Then they got nothing in exchange, and they all voted for this thing that they said was a big ass pile of garbage, because that's what the Republican Party is. But the Democratic Party isn't like that. It is the African American coalition, and the LGBTQ coalition, and the women coalition, and the Jewish coalition, and the Latinx coalition. It is the gerontocracy. It is the young versions. It is the progressives. It is the centrists. Okay. Let's see here. Dennis Griffin says, why didn't you protest and change all of this the past 16 years? All of this has been going on. Dennis, I have been working my ass off, man. But I'm one person, Do you think I can solve this just by my fucking self, Dennis? Jesus Christ, man. That's some real fucking shit. I have never seen anything like that in my entire life. Why didn't you, one fucking singular human being, why didn't you fucking solve all this over the past 16 years? I'm trying, man. I'm fucking trying. Quinn says, in all honesty, you're one of the only Democrats that made me seriously consider voting Dem. I really appreciate you saying that, Quinn. That is literally what I'm doing here, my man. And let me be, I don't want to leave it at that. Quinn, come back. Hit me up. Send me messages through my website or my DMs or anything like that. I am not done, man. Like, I want you to be a hardcore Democrat by the end of this, my man. All right. Don't you find it insane to take ginormous amounts of money from medical and put it into policing? Yes, I do, Tyrone. Dan Blackroyd. Okay, Dan Blackroyd. I'm sorry I didn't fix everything over the past 16 years, guys. I apologize. All right, everybody, let's see. Any final questions here? Zonia says the two parties we have now are a one-party system. They are different heads of the same dragon. That is inaccurate, Zonia. There are vastly different outcomes depending on who is in charge, both on the state and the federal level. And there are better outcomes for people when Democrats are in charge, both on the federal and the state level. And there are worse outcomes when Republicans are in charge, both on the federal and the state level. So yeah, it's not two parties that are both part of the same coin. It is not performative obstructionism or resistance or whatever. The parties are very different. The platforms are very different. The politicians are very different. The outcomes are very different. Let's see here. Biden said he was a Zionist and with Israel to the end, like Trump. No? Yeah, but you can cherry pick specific things, Zonia. But what's important is the bird's eye perspective. You have to take a look at what all is happening. Because doing what you're doing there, the cherry picking thing, that's what we call both sidesism, where one person says, well, what about when Trump did this? And then you say, well, what about when Biden did this? And then I say, what about when Ted Cruz did this? And then you say, what about when Chuck Schumer did this? What's important is the aggregate. What's important is looking at politics and the political parties holistically and seeing, okay, what are blue states doing versus what are red states doing? How do healthcare outcomes or how is national security or how is diplomacy handled differently by different presidents on the net? But yeah, I agree with you that Biden fucking sucked on the issue of Israel among other issues that I did not agree with him on. But I could argue fucking night and day. I could talk for 5 hours about why the Biden presidency was vastly better than both the first and the second Trump presidency, K. Yeti says, "What's whataboutism? Whataboutism is it's a rhetorical debate maneuver that is meant to obscure the issue. So if you slap me in the face and I say, hey, you just slapped me in the face, and you say, well, what about the time that you left the dirty dishes in the sink? Now we're arguing about which is worse. Now we're arguing about, does me leaving dirty dishes in the sink mean that you're allowed to slap me in the face? And then we just start going back and forth, and we just start like trying to keep score about which one of us is the worst person. Did I deserve to get slapped in the face, or should you be punished for slapping me in the face? When the issue is you slap me in the face, Does that make sense? Alrighty, let's see here. It's whataboutism. Oh, sorry, my reading's not great. I need glasses. Zonia says, I understand where you're coming from, but I just don't think you understood what I was saying. Let's see here. So what were you saying then, Zonia? It's Owen says, dude is biased as fuck. Give examples. I always give examples. It's Owen. But if there's something that you want more examples of, let me know. Let's see here. K80 responding to the what about if somebody did that? LOL. Zonia says it's about the puppet master per se. Zonia, you believe that there's a puppet master. I agree, but I think that there's a difference. I think that the billionaire class has been working behind the scenes for a long time to try to affect certain political outcomes, dismantling the government so they don't have to pay taxes, so that they can poison us all with chemical runoff from their factories and shit like that. And it is true that the Democrats have, since the Clinton administration, become more business friendly and taking corporate donations and things like that. One could argue that they needed to do that to start winning elections again, because since the 80s, the Democrats were getting fucking shellacked for over 12 fucking years. But that's an entirely different argument. The point is, even taking all that into account, the Republican Party is still way more in league with the billionaire class, way more doing their bidding than the billionaire class. So yeah, so you're making a good point, but the reality remains the same. The data remains the same. That billionaires pour more of their money into the Republican Party because the Republican Party's platform is what the billionaire class wants. And while the Democrats might water down any attempt to increase taxes on the billionaire class, it is still not doing these massive tax cuts for the billionaire class that the Republican Party does. It is not cutting regulations for these corporations like the Republican Party is. It is not subsidizing massive corporations the way the Republican Party is. It's a massive difference, Zonia. It is a massive difference. All right, so let's see here. K Yeti says, I do have a dynamic question. K Yeti, I don't usually have people on, but I'm right about to dip out of here. So I will have you on to discuss if you are still here. Let's see. Crypto Bobo 317 says, what can Dems do to make progressivism popular? So I want to get rid, Crypto Bobo, I want to get rid of this idea that it's the Democratic Party's responsibility to do that. Because the Democratic Party is made up of a bunch of different coalitions, and it's very difficult juggling. It's very different. I like that word though, juggling. I don't know what that is, but I really like it. It's very difficult to juggle all those different coalitions. So that is the reason why we tend to have very lukewarm, old ass centrists in positions of power in the Democratic Party, because it's really difficult to balance the progressives and the centrists and the LGBTQ coalition and the Latinx coalition, the African American coalition and the women coalition, the Jewish coalition, etc. The people who are responsible for making progressivism more popular is progressives. You know, people like you, if you are one, and me, I am one. You know, the people who are doing the work. You know, like your AOC's and your Jasmine Crockett's and your Bernie Sanders's and your Mamdani's. You know, like they are doing the work of making progressivism more popular. And you know, I would love it if the Democratic Party embraced a more progressive agenda and embraced younger, more progressive candidates. But you know, they are a rainbow coalition that makes up people from Joe Manchin to AOC. And if we, the progressive wing, want more power, then we have to take it. We have to be the ones electing more progressives in the primary and then working to elect them in the general. You know, I wanted Katie Porter to win the Senate primary in California, and I donated to her campaign. And then Adam Schiff won, and I was like, all right, Adam Schiff is great too. I would have loved Katie Porter better. I should have worked harder. I should have worked harder to elect Katie Porter, but I didn't, you know? There we go. Zonia, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. Lowercase j, I don't know who the most successful president in the 21st century was. K Yeti, all right. Do you have a, what do you call it? Accept. All right. I have accepted you.
Hey, brother, I appreciate you letting me on.
Yeah, of course. All right, yeah, what's your question, my man?
So first of all, I'm going to be a little delicate in how I talk and I respond. I'm an active duty Marine, so my opinions represent myself, not the DoD. But that being said, I absolutely live vicariously through your opinions and agree full-heartedly. So thank you for the space you've created.
I appreciate you being here, man, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, brother. So my question is, when we have, you know, invasions into parks in LA, or Trump's campaign not repaying New Mexico hundreds of millions of dollars, what are the actual avenues to these blue states not paying federal taxes? Is that actually a possibility?
I am so sorry, K Yeti. That is over my head. I apologize.
No worries, man. Yeah. I was just curious about it.
Yeah, I'm going to let you out of here, and I'm going to opine on this for a second, but I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
All right. Yeah, as far as like the legal avenues go for blue states withholding tax funds, or, you know, forcing Trump to pay back states that haven't, that Trump still owes money to, like, I'm just not sure. Maybe there are legal avenues. I guess the concern would be it finding its way up all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is already fully in the bag for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. But yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a bummer. I really wish that I had more for you, my man, especially after you said so many nice things about me in my live stream. But anyways, oh boy, I almost did an hour and a half today. So I'm going to get out of here, guys. Catch me back here tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. And yeah, be good to yourselves. Be good to everybody. Self-care is part of the work. Do the work. Join my Discord, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.